Hello YouTube, an on-screen appearance for this one and everything. I figured I would do it this way just because this is more in line with what I do on my main channel where I do kind of a recording. I'll include a couple of different video pieces, which I'm going to include in this one just to give you a little bit of context. But I thought I would talk a little bit about kind of an update on the channel where things are sitting because it's been about a month since the last video that I recorded on this one. But I thought I would take advantage of the fact that I've got this format available so that I can show you a couple different things, talk about kind of where the collecting sits because believe it or not, even with the quiet output of the channel, there are still wheels moving in the background, and collecting wise things have been pretty good. For the most part though, a part of the reason there haven't been a lot of videos is because there haven't been any box breaks recently, so I haven't had any to show you. At the same time, WWE has had its finest release, which I talked about. I did the checklist overview and everything. I didn't have anything more that I needed to add. A lot of what's kind of I thought would play out has played out. I think there's some very nice cards in there. Since I do collect some JCJ and stuff, I've been able to pick up a couple of singles here and there. But the other reason there haven't been a lot of videos is there haven't been any pickups directly to me yet. A lot of it's been consolidated, so it's going to be coming in kind of a ship my cards mail day down the road here, but it's probably not going to happen before the Toronto Fall Expo. That's going to be happening in November. So right now I'm recording this in mid-October, so it'd be a couple of weeks before that happens. Otherwise, there's not a lot of news to report, but I did get inspired by a couple of specific things over the last week or two that I thought would make it worthwhile to do a little bit of an update, and then also some things that I'm planning to do on the channel. But first of all, let me quickly talk about, like I said, there hasn't been a lot of pickups, although I have made some progress on a few things. Part of the reason for it is going to be also part of the reason that I wanted to talk about this video, the topic-wise, and since I can share the screen, I'll kind of share this one with you just so you can see. On the channel, you know that one of my main PCs is Britt Baker, that I have a lot of different pickups for, and I actually keep a little bit of a checklist in order to kind of help me keep track of things, and I did it on Google Sheets. So I'm just going to share the tab here for you just so you can see it. What's here isn't super important, but the key here is that I'm at the stage here where I was able to put together the checklist of all the different series that Upper Deck came out with and all the different things. You can see I got all the little rows for auto, memorabilia, serial numbers, and all that. You don't have to get into this kind of depth. I like to have it just for my record keeping to make it easy for myself. And then what I do is I mark off things in yellow when I was able to pick them up, but they're on route still and they haven't directly gotten to me. I take them off the list when they're actually in my possession. So in this case, you're not seeing any yellow, but that's because I filtered it out. So this is actually what's left over. This is the cards that I'm looking for currently. So right now, as it stands, it is 34 cards total. That includes all series. I don't include one of ones on the checklist because it's redundant. If you have a one of one or you don't, either you have it or you don't. For everything else, regardless of how low print number it is, I do include it on this list. So that includes all the parallels, any inserts, autographs, memorabilia, everything, whatever Upper Deck has produced that Britt Baker was on that I was able to get on a checklist here, I included it, and I'm down to 34 items on this checklist. Obviously, when new series come out, and we'll talk about that in a minute, when new series come out, then I'll just add it to the list and kind of put it together, and then the list gets a little bit bigger, and we go from there. But if I was to take the yellow here, and I kind of bring it back in, instead go all the way to yellow, I've got 29 cards here that are marked off currently. That means all of these I have actually already purchased or traded for, and I'm just waiting for it to come into my possession. So I've got 34 on the checklist and 29 of them are en route. So that's going to be in a future mail day, which I'll definitely include. But for now, right now, I've got nothing to report on that. So that's the checklist piece. So you can see I've definitely made progress, but the issue is that there just hasn't been a lot of new series. And I'm going to get to that again in a moment because, like I said, one of the videos that I saw this past week or two inspired me to kind of record this one because I wanted to kind of add a little bit more to it and then also talk about it from Upper Deck and also talk about marketing and talk about kind of how they've been promoting that product. WWE right now has gotten plenty of coverage, but the reality is it's pretty straightforward. Fanatics has done a very good job getting it out there, promoting their product. And again, I think the box prices are too high. But nonetheless, the singles, a lot of the singles have actually performed very well because people are into it. The brand of WWE, whatever we think about the product they're making, good, bad, or indifferent, so however you feel about it is fine. Regardless, the brand is very powerful and it's done a lot of the heavy lifting so that the product itself and the cards themselves do pretty well. Now that is going to come into contrast with AEW and Upper Deck because obviously I like collecting them. And in terms of this channel, we do a lot of stuff related to those cards because I collect them predominantly. But at the same time, they haven't done anywhere near as good a job promoting it. And I'm going to get into a couple of thoughts about how that should play out or how I think it should play out in this video when I talk about it. But in order to talk about that, I want to start off by playing a clip from the Wrestling Trading Cards YouTube channel. This is where the gentlemen on here are going to talk about the AEW metal specifically. I'm going to play you a little bit of a snippet from it. I'll also include a link in the description so you can listen to the whole thing and check it out for yourself. And then I do actually respond in the comments section into it, and I'm going to reach out to them and see if I can have maybe initiate a conversation either on this channel or that channel or somewhere, because I'd love to have the conversation and expand on it a little bit further. Because I think they make a valid point from the perspective that they're looking at it from, but at the same time, I think that there's also a couple of other things that are worthwhile mentioning, but Upper Deck should take some of this to heart because there's some challenges that simply you're not going to be able to get past without having to do the extra work. And I'll talk about basically what that means in this video so that you understand it. And I'd love to get your thoughts in the comments as I go through it. But hang in there with me because I've got a couple of things I want to get to. So first, I'm going to start off by sharing this with you. I sped it up slightly. I think it's just 1.25 just so we can get through this piece. It starts at about the 10-minute mark, and I'll include a link in the description to it, like I mentioned. So I'll play a little bit of this for you so that you can hear kind of their thoughts on the AEW, specifically the most recent, because they're talking about July to September 2025. It's a quarterly report video that they put together. And obviously AEW Metal Universe is one that has come out. So when I'm talking about AEW specifically in this video, I'm going to be talking about Metal Universe, and I'm going to be using that as an example of what it is that I'm talking about. And I'll also incorporate a couple of other things for you. But let me start off by playing a clip of this for you, and then I'll stop it, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about some thoughts that I have in terms of what they were talking about and some of the things that I think could be helpful going forward as far as this piece is concerned. So let's check it out.
Keep assembling. Now, last month we were talking about AEW, and we both said that how disappointed we were that we hadn't seen anything new from AEW, when all the while there was product on the shelf about to go out the door and we weren't aware of it. Now, that doesn't speak to us being clued out. That speaks to them not really blaring their trumpet and saying, hey guys, Metal Universe is coming out soon, because there was no advanced press. We didn't know nothing about it at the National.
There was no, I'm not going to beat a dead horse in the mouth here, but there was just nothing at the Nationals here that indicated that Upper Deck even had the license, let alone they were putting stuff out. There's just nothing about it. And it's just odd to me. And I saw there was some segment, either it was either Card Foundation, or I don't think it was them. It was somebody else was talking to someone from Upper Deck. And there was just, I don't know, it was almost like a political BS type double speak there, where like, we have this and da, but there was no real answer as to why Upper Deck as a company is not supporting their license of AEW product. And again, like you just said, it came out of nowhere, like Metal. Oh, hey, by the way, it's coming out tomorrow, kind of almost.
Now let me speak to that set and to the 2022 Metal Universe, the Skybox. Those are the best two AEW sets that have been released, or not. They're my favorites. I think this last release was great. So it really troubles me that we didn't know it was coming. We might have known it was coming, but certainly there was no, all of a sudden, it's here. And it's a fantastic set. Like, it's a really robust set, lots of inserts, lots of autographs, everything that you'd want. You know, if you buy,
they sent me a box, which I have sitting in the back. I just haven't done anything with it yet. You know, and I'm always grateful for that.
It's a good product. It's a really good product. Like I say, the 2022 version, this 2025 Metal Universe are the elites, if you will, of the Upper Deck releases for AEW. Like, it's a good set. I ended up getting quite a few of the insert sets, and I was surprised. It's like, you know what, they're making good product. They just need to be a little more louder about it, I think. You know what I mean? Because
no, they don't need to be a little bit more louder about it. They need to be talk, period.
Yeah.
It's not a matter that they're talking, so they're whispering. They're not saying anything. And
no, it's on us.
It's no social media presence for it. There's nothing.
Yeah, and we talk about this stuff, because there's a lot of modern WWE talk, but there's not a lot of modern AEW talk, or modern indie talk, or modern.
I think you and I, from the from this year at the National, the panel to these YouTube clips here, I think we talk more about it than anybody else talks about these releases out there.
And it deserves to be discussed.
Now, I will say with this channel is the exception, because I have multiple videos about this, but I understand their general point, and I don't necessarily disagree with their premise. And this is kind of the key that I wanted to make sure that I outlined on this, is that this is providing a perspective of, number one, two guys that collect wrestling cards that have been doing it for a long time, who run the Wrestling Trading Cards website that has checklists and information and all that. And Paul there is somebody who's on his social media, showcases a lot of different sets in terms of wrestling trading cards, going all the way back to the beginning of time into the more modern products, WWE, AEW, all the things in between, TNA cards, some independent promotions, all kinds of stuff. So when you're talking about wrestling trading cards, we're talking about wrestling trading cards covering the gamut. One of my criticisms of different outlets out there, and Main Event Wrestling Cards is an example of this, where there's great information, but it may as well be called Main Event WWE cards, because that's all it really is. It's WWE cards, not wrestling cards. This is wrestling trading cards. So they do cover the gamut of it in terms of that. It's a little bit more full featured. That's part of the reason I decided to focus a little bit more on the AEW on this channel. I don't ignore the WWE, because, as I said, I did a video doing a whole breakdown and discussion on the checklist with Finest, some thoughts about the design and all that, giving a little background to some of the history, because, again, they borrowed some design cues from previous Finest, which, by the way, is a good idea. They've got some very nice designs in the backlog, so why not use them? Take advantage of it. The whole tiered set thing is a convention going back to the 90s of Topps. So I have no problem talking about that here. But I don't need to spend too much time on it, because there's going to be plenty of coverage for it. It's over-indexed. So in this case, they're correct that AEW is underserved in terms of information. Now, your argument could be like, well, WWE has a much bigger fan base, a much bigger audience that's going to be interested in it, and you'd be 100% correct. I'm not arguing with you. But what I'm saying is, even in terms of the proportion of the size of audiences, it's still underserved. So there is a little bit more room to do more. And they're correct, though, that Upper Deck has a hand in this too. The marketing department has done some things that I question because at the end of the day, it's on them. It's on them to get the information out there. And I think that part of it is that they're taking the playbook that they've done with some of these other brands and products, and they're not understanding that this one is going to, as much as any others, by the way, there are plenty of people who would argue that the hockey product, which is one of their biggest licenses, is also underpromoted compared to what it should be. So if one of their biggest licenses is underpromoted, imagine if you're not one of their biggest licenses. It's one of those things where it's a chicken or the egg. And that's kind of the analogy that I want to use for this. You have to do a little bit of extra work. And in this case, since the size of the audience you're dealing with is already niche, wrestling is a niche in the trading card space. It has made some inroads. There are some bigger sales and all that, which they like to talk about, and they talked about on this video. But in comparison to sports cards, when you're in a genre where 5 and 6 figure sales are celebrated because they are, pushing the market forward, as opposed to the sports card trading landscape where $1 million sales, sometimes we don't bat an eye, you have to understand that we're dealing with this on levels, which is fine. It's one of those things where as a collector, it does create some appeal because you can build an amazing collection on a fraction of the budget that it would be in a comparable sports card genre. If you want to have a set of Tom Brady cards, some of the best, you're talking millions of dollars. You want to have some of the best stuff from The Rock or Roman Reigns or something, it'll still cost you a lot of money. But in relative terms, some of that stuff is available a little bit more reasonably. Now, I am grading on a curve. Now, if you're not taking the absolute top people and you're taking some other stars or some folks that maybe you enjoy, maybe just characters you like, if it's somebody else like that, a lot of that is way more affordable comparatively to the other one. But now, take that. We're talking about WWE, which is the number one brand in the industry, like it or don't like it, whatever the case may be. And then you're taking the number 2 player, which moves quite a bit down in order to get to the number 2. It has a smaller audience to begin with. So it means as a promotional group for your marketing department, you have to be a little bit more careful and you really have to think about how you're going to market to it because you have to approach the grassroots. You've got a smaller core audience, so you have to try to engage them as best you can. And one of the things that I've seen that I understand, but I'm also kind of disappointed by is that one of the things that I see, and this is a kudos to AEW on this, is that on AEW's programming, like on Dynamite and Collision at different times, I've seen promotional ads for the Upper Deck trading cards. That's great. That's a good thing. Now, you are preaching to the converted, though, but it does make sense because you do want to reach out to that audience. For them, it's not so much getting them to necessarily understand that, AEW cards exist. It's getting them to understand that trading cards exist. That, hey, by the way, in addition to maybe your AEW hat or a replica belt or whatever other thing that you collect, the action figures, there's a lot of these things in the wrestling collecting genre that people collect. Well, in addition to that, hey, there are some trading cards, and Upper Deck is the manufacturer of these trading cards. So if you want to have some AEW cards of your favorite wrestlers, then this is what it is. But you're still preaching the converted. You've already got an audience. You've got an audience that not only is already keyed into wrestling because they're watching a wrestling show, they're watching an AEW wrestling show. So specifically, they're at least more inclined potentially to be interested in something like that. So I get it. And then same thing, AEW Unrestricted, the podcast. It's sponsored by Upper Deck for the trading cards as well. So, but again, you're preaching, now you're talking about a niche podcast where a lot of times it's interviewing the talent. So if you're somebody that's seeking out a podcast where they interview the AEW talent, and specifically AEW talent or AEW people that work there in different capacities, you're very much in the AEW ecosystem already. You're not really reaching outside of your very specific pocket of people. You're inside your tribe already. So at this point, like, you're preaching to the converted once again. So you're looking for, if you're a marketing group, you're trying to reach out a little bit outside that audience. It doesn't mean you're going to hook them. It doesn't mean you're going to get them. But if you get a few of them to give it a try, maybe some of that sticks. And that's how you kind of build that audience that you currently don't have. And it's, again, chicken or the egg. If you build the audience, it will help the product move. If it helps the product move, then the cards sell for more, which in turn helps the product move. And it's a cyclical thing. It just helps build on itself. But the only way you can get there is you have to start by actually getting a little bit more of the audience engaged in it outside of that core group that you're already familiar with it. So you can advertise to them as much as you like. If they're interested in the cards, they're buying them already, most likely. Now, in this vein, I'm going to include a link in the description to you from a podcast episode from Dr. James Beckett. So it's called Dr. James Beckett Sports Card Insight. So if you're familiar with Beckett from back in the day of the Beckett magazine and the Beckett media empire, this is somebody who is a big voice in the industry, still has a big name in terms of that, and has his own podcast that he does, about 15-minute episodes, give or take. So it's one of those things. He talks about different topics. Some of the episodes I like, some of the episodes I'm not as interested in, but it's one of those things where he does have a wealth of experience to be able to bring to the table and be able to talk about a lot of different things, be able to talk about the past, different players that were involved in the sports card and trading card industries back then, and be able to give great stories as far as that's concerned and give his own experiences, of which he has plenty to share. That said, there are episodes sometimes, and the one I'm going to include here for you is episode 1337. It's called Upper Deck Product Mix. It's a 12-minute episode where he was actually given some product from Upper Deck, which, hey, great. You want to reach out to as much of an audience as possible. Again, going back to what I said a second ago, I'm not contradicting myself here. You know, Beckett has a little bit more of a broad appeal and a broad reach, so that's not a terrible idea. I like the concept of it. But I remember listening to that episode. This was from, I think, back in February. I remember listening to that episode and, I wanted to bang my head against the table. And the reason for it is that, again, it's not a bad idea to give him some product because, again, he reaches beyond just the traditional wrestling card audience. Giving product to a wrestling card podcast isn't necessarily going to move the needle. It's still not a bad idea, but the point is, you're still preaching the convert a little bit. It is nicer to expand it to an audience that may be a wrestling card podcast that talks about multiple different companies, which is helpful. But again, that's still the grassroots. So Beckett would be a little bit beyond that, a little bit beyond that scope inside of the trading card industry as a whole. The problem was in that 12 minutes, he covered a bunch of different products. He tried to compare the Black Diamond hockey to the Black Diamond AEW, which was the product that was coming out at the time. The thing is, in terms of that 12 minutes, again, I'm talking about he did multiple products inside of 12 minutes. In reality, for the majority of the episode, he barely talked about any of the products. And I think he mentioned the PWHL at the end of it. So he's got multiple products. He's barely touching on it. This is an audio-only podcast. The only thing I got out of it, listening to it originally from the Black Diamond AEW, is that he got 7 cards instead of the 6 average that he was expecting. He compared and contrasted that to the hockey card one where he got 5. And then he got 3 patch cards. And I think he mentioned he got an autograph. Which ones? I don't know. Did he like the design on them? No idea. But that was the episode. That was the product review. And if any of you remember, Upper Deck Black Diamond is not a cheap product. But it's not the cost. That's the thing. My point is that he received promotional product, review product, and there is no real review. It's just there were 7 cards in the box. He got 3 patch cards and I think an autograph. Now, to be clear, I'm not blaming him. It's not necessarily his genre. He may not be super versed in terms of which cards may be more appealing or other. He gave a very cursory summary of it and acknowledged receipt of the box. But for a person listening to an audio-only podcast, that it doesn't do anything to help me. I have no more information really than when I started. I may as well go watch a couple of box breaks because I'm going to get more information watching somebody else open a couple of boxes and at least say, hey, that looks nice. I'm going to get more out of that than I did in this terms of this product review. And that is what the marketing department saw fit to give a couple of boxes for review on a podcast. So this is the bit of a struggle. It's the bit of the uphill climb that you're taking because, as someone who collects the cards and has a fair bit of familiarity with it, to be clear, I'm not angling for review product. But what I'm getting at is that you do want to incorporate some people that have a little bit of knowledge on the product itself so they can give a little bit more than a high-level cursory review. I'm not going to blame James Beckett for not necessarily being able to wax poetic on this product. But again, you tried to squeeze in 3 or 4 products inside of a 12-minute episode, so you're not giving any of them really more than a couple of moments worth of discussion anyway. So it's like, I'm not sure what the value was of that review portion because I can't even necessarily call it a review, if you get what I'm saying. In comparison to, I give credit, the AEW Unrestricted folks open a couple of packs and they make a couple of comments and a couple of them. But again, this is audio only. How much am I getting out of this? I think they might have a YouTube version as well. But regardless, there's minimal amount that I'm getting it from it. A lot of the ones that are opening the cards are not necessarily card people, which again, nothing wrong with that. And you are preaching to the converted. But what I'm saying is this is one of the ways that you try to get into the grassroots. So if you're going to do review product, where you dispense that review product is one element of how you utilize this. Social media is another one. The guys on the wrestling trading card video there, they talked about the social media element. So when a new product is coming out, when Metal Universe was coming out, they would have wanted to see some more so that it was in front of them. And to put into perspective, not only is it running a wrestling trading card website, in addition to that, obviously they have the YouTube channel, but in addition to that, one of them runs a wrestling store where they sell cards. So right there, this is the exact audience that is keyed in onto this. So they should know it's coming. I knew it's coming pretty well because I keep pretty well tapped in terms of what's going on with AEW and release dates and all that. However, if these guys who are more tuned in than the average person are stating that they really completely missed it originally and it didn't quite catch it until it suddenly popped up in front of them, then that means the information isn't getting out to that audience. And at that point, that's where I think you have to review your strategy here. And I think the key is that you have to kind of understand that this is a niche product. It is a very specific way that it has to be marketed. You are going to have to utilize that grassroots. You are going to have to utilize those smaller venues because you're going to have to build your way up from there. You have to get the product out into enough hands in order for people to even get some traction on it. If they get a chance to open it and they like it, that's where the opportunity is to open more product. They open more product, the dealers sell more of it. They sell more of it, they're going to want to order more of it. They're not going to want to avoid it. I did a video where one of the dealers, I think it's RBI Crew 7, specifically talked about, he has never made money on an AEW product. Well, that's a damning statement coming from a dealer who at this point doesn't necessarily just specialize in wrestling cards, but he has a definite heavy slant towards professional wrestling cards. So the truth is, whether he likes AEW, doesn't like AEW, loves WWE, hates WWE, whatever, if it sells, he will sell it. So the answer for the dealer in this case is going to be, what is selling for me? Well, if the product isn't getting opened enough, we're not getting enough of the cards out there, and therefore you're not going to have enough chances for those sales that are then going to drive. Sales drive people to open more boxes. More boxes mean the dealers want to sell it and they want to order it because it's actually selling. It's a self-sustaining cycle. It has to work together. That's the only way this ecosystem works. Now, like I said, this inspired me into a couple of different directions, a couple avenues that I want to take you down. But let me take you down one more avenue. I want to talk about one other thing, by the way. I disagree with Paul from that video. I actually think Allure is a better product, and I particularly like the first year of Allure. But the second year of Allure is very good. But the new Metal Universe is very nice. I'm not going to say no, because obviously I was able to pick up a couple different cards for Brit, so I'm a fan. But I got to tell you, the Allure, the first year Allure, I think they really hit it out of the park on that one. Personally, I'm a big fan of that. But we cannot deny the allure of the PMG. However, we've still got a problem. And I want to address a second issue now that I want to get into. So I'm going to open up here Terapeak in the tab, and I want to show you something. And this is something you can repeat on your own. Check it out for yourself. Maybe you can use different search terms, and maybe you'll have more luck than me. But I did play around with it a little bit earlier. So what I want to show you here is, this is from eBay.com, and specifically in Terapeak, what I want to show you is that I went and did a search for 2025 AEW green. I used the word precious, as in precious metal gems. You could also punch in PMG and get a different set of results. But I tried both, and trust me, the results are not fundamentally different. If you add them all up together, it's still not a very big number. Now, I decided to do the green. Originally, I wanted to do the gold, but the amount of actual completed sales for gold is shockingly low. But you're going to see based on the green, because remember, greens are out of 10. So it's 10 times as many of them out there as the gold counterpart. So these are the PMGs. And overall, you've got less than 20 listings here. And this is going back to the beginning. I've got them sorted for most recent. So this is October 11, 2025. So the first one, the top one right here that sold 5 days ago at the time that I'm recording this, is a Daniel Bryan PMG. So here's a green Daniel Bryan. There you go. Awesome card. Great. 325 fixed price. So that's very solid. By the way, if it's in Terapeak, it means that it was actually paid for. So that's an important distinction here. Second one here, $155. Powerhouse Hobbs, the retro green. That's a pretty cool looking card. If you like the retros, I think those are fun. $349 for Swerve Strickland. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you're getting the general point of it. The $349 for the Swerve. Very nice. So you can see John Moxley. This is the retro. You've got Evil Uno. Some of them, like I said, this one here is Vincent, which obviously is a lesser character. I think he's even been released from AEW at this point. His contract expired. And, that was $20 in an auction. So obviously some characters aren't going to go too crazy. But this is for the green. These are all for the green. Darby Allin, $225 fixed price, which I think is a decent price. I think it's fair. But it tells you, this is the green PMG, which are pretty tough. Hangman Adam Page, the current reigning world champion, and somebody who came off a very good storyline to get there, and obviously is currently still the world champion as we speak. $203.50 in the PMG green. And this listing also includes the autograph out of 10, which is not a PMG, but a PMG-esque. It's also out of 10. It's got the same kind of thing. So my point here is, this is the entire list. This is all that has shown up here in terms of on eBay with that search term since the beginning, because I went back 3 years worth of sales, and this product came out in August. So I don't need to go back 3 years worth of sale. I only need to go back to the month of August. The point is, these are not numerous enough sales to really build any momentum off of. There's just not enough sales. It's really hard to comp, because you can see there's a lot of characters missing. If certain characters come up, how much are you going to ask for? I didn't specifically display it, but one of the MJFs sold for $700 fixed price. So would the next one sell for the same? How much would it sell for an auction? Honestly, I think probably a little bit less, but it would still be a very good card. It would still be a very good pull. But the problem is, we don't have enough sales. He has a retro and he has a base version of the greens. So there's 20 cards there out there, and we've only got one that we can draw any information from. That's a very limited sample size, a very limited set. Now, I understand I'm only looking at eBay. We have to take into account there are social medias out there. You can probably find some cards on Instagram. You can probably find some cards on breaks that got sold that way. You can find some cards on Facebook groups and things like that. I'm on some of those. So yes, some of the golds, some of the greens, some of those ones are going to get sold in those places. My point is, if there's enough money to be made, some of that stuff still winds up on eBay, especially with 10 of each person. There should definitely be more than one page worth of completed listings, is what I'm getting at a couple of months in. August, September, October. 2 months if we're being generous, almost 3 months. There should be more than that in terms of completed sales available in terms of data. And some people should be doubling up by now. There should be more than one copy available for them. And in terms of active listings, there isn't a ton of those either. So it's one of those things they're just not getting out there. Now, why is that? There's a couple of reasons. One of those reasons is kind of playing into what I've been discussing here, where I don't think that the promotion, the marketing, has done a good enough job enticing people to, number one, understand that that product is out there. Number two, enticing them to give it a try. And number three, opening up enough boxes to get enough of it out there. And the second reason, which is also a factor here that I want to talk about now, is I want to talk about EPAC. That's the second issue that I see with a lot of this stuff. So something like Metal Universe gets hurt, in my opinion, because of EPAC. And that is as somebody who has had some good luck for the 2022 edition, because I pulled the gold PMG out of EPAC that way. The problem with that is that the more hits get stuck on EPAC, it creates a scenario where, again, there isn't much going on. The hype cycle for this has ended. We are now too far past it. We're a couple of months past the product originally coming out. So the momentum is lost. So by the time we get to EPAC, probably in a couple of months from now, it's not going to be a second hype cycle, really. It's going to be a group of people chasing after achievements. And by the way, some of the achievement cards are really nice. As a collector, I do enjoy chasing after those as well. But regardless, a lot of the momentum's already been lost on this. And what happens is a couple of different things. Number one, suddenly some of these other things come out of the woodwork. Great, which means that as a collector, some of these become available. But realistically, the second time around, the pricing actually drops in a lot of cases, even for some of the tougher cards, because, well, the first person that got the first one and paid the top price, that MJF retro buyer that paid $700, probably the next person that buys that same card that is also going to be out of 10 probably won't pay $700. They'll probably pay less than that. And the third one will pay less than that. And if you wait a couple of months on top of everything else, when a lot of the hype cycle has dropped off, what if the next one sells for 400 or 350? So all of a sudden you took a 50% drop. So it's not like that reignites the market. It doesn't. It puts some of that stuff finally back into circulation. Some of the jambalayas and some of the other tough case hits are going to appear, which is great. And that means you'll get a chance as a collector. Maybe you missed the first time around, but on the second go around, you'll be able to get your hands on it and it'll be cheaper because a lot of that momentum has died off. And some of the other inserts and things that maybe you were chasing after to finish your set or whatever the case may be, those are going to be available cheaper because in some cases, those are going to go to ComC as people go into a quick race to the bottom as suddenly the supply floods. It happens every single time. It's one of those things where I feel like a product like this would probably be well served to be just the physical boxes. Just include the physical boxes, get them out the door, and take advantage of that initial hype cycle when people were waiting for new product. The long delays were also damaging to a lot of it because you want to build some momentum. You want collectors to have enough time to be able to get their singles and chase after them, but you don't want to have too much time because then you're kind of just sitting on your hands and you're waiting for the next thing to come out. Or you're waiting for EPAC to come out so that some of those singles that are missing that you haven't been able to get your hands on suddenly appear on the marketplace. And that's not necessarily the type of collecting cycle that you want to create. And that's just by the way that you've structured this. So like I said, EPAC, I think, serves a purpose. There is a good place for it. And the achievements and all that create a fun chase for different people to collect. But there are a lot of challengers with the way they've decided to approach this, which, again, is kind of an issue. And that's kind of what I want to play at with a lot of this. And if you understand that, then a lot of it makes more sense in terms of why some of this stuff is playing out the way that it is. Again, it's the chicken or the egg. You have to actually start something in order to create the scenario, in order to make it easier to be able to build that for yourself. And overall, the better you are to set this up ahead of time and really plan it out and methodically think about it, I would really consider very carefully how each one of these releases get rolled out, the distance and the gaps between releases. One thing that I've talked about in the past, which I still believe there should be at least 4 releases, spaced out about quarterly, give or take. Preferably a couple more would be nice, but I'm saying 4 would be a good place to start. 4 consistent releases per year. And by the way, talking about the EPAC, if the EPAC is such a critical thing in the ecosystem, and I understand that Upper Deck likes it for a lot of different reasons, then maybe borrow a page out of hockey, something that you already have there, and maybe have a specific release that is EPAC exclusive. You can have like a Fleer Ultra, a Fleer Ultra with some really nice photography. There you go. You create a thing where there are physical cards that you can still get your hands on that wind up on ComC, that wind up in all these other avenues, but this is the EPAC exclusive, and maybe a couple of these other products don't go to EPAC. So you give everybody something. You give the EPAC folks something that they can still chase after. You can still have achievements and things like that related to it. But at the same time, something like Metal Universe, the whatever boxes are out there, all the hits, all the greens, all the gold PMGs, all that nice stuff that you're chasing after, it's all in those boxes. So you want to find them all, you got to open all the boxes. Not open some of the boxes, wait until the boxes hit clearance, and then, by the way, some of them are going to be in EPAC anyway, which is the scenario you're playing out right now. That's how this is playing out, this cycle. Okay, now I think this video has been just about long enough, but the last thing that I want to touch on real quick before I end the video is that obviously with the whole product calendar being all over the place, that also pushes people to kind of lose touch with it, because it's one of those things you don't know what to get excited about because you don't know when it's actually coming out. So delays and pushbacks and all that, it hurts. And there aren't enough releases to make up the difference. And that's why I say, like, EPAC releases, I acknowledge them on the channel. I talk about them because they're relevant, but they don't count. They do not count as releases to me. They never have, and they never will. So it's one of those things you have to understand. You're going to have flagship every year. It's a staple. You got to have flagship. I get it. You're going to have some combination of either Allure or Metal, and you're going to have a combination of some other product. In this case, we're going to have SP Game Used is the next one that's coming up. I believe that is set to go in November, so probably sometime next month. Feels like it's going to be towards the end of the month. We'll see if everything comes according to pass. I think those are going to be some really nice cards. But again, we are in August is when Metal came out. And Metal, I thought, was done extremely well. But the problem is you're going to be waiting the rest of August, September, October, probably most of November. So that's almost 4 months that you have to wait for the next one. And then the one after that, the SP Signature Series, is presumably January. So that feels like it maybe be a couple of months. But the point is that, a 4-month gap in there. And again, nothing in between, maybe an EPAC release, maybe an EPAC drop in there. It's just not enough. It's one of those things where it's not enough to build any real momentum. Going back to the guy's criticisms, we didn't have enough real heavy promotion leading into it. So social media, the grassroots campaign, taking advantage of people that are a little bit more versed in it, that are able to explain it a little better. They're able to give you a little bit more than I pulled 7 cards. And again, it's not to throw shade at the example that I gave, but it is review. Review boxes are marketing material. Review boxes are part of the marketing of these products. If you're going to be trying to market these products, then you need to get them out of front of as many eyeballs as you reasonably can, as much of a broad audience as you reasonably can, or at the very least, if you're not going to be able to reach the broadest possible audience, then you go the other way and you really niche down and you focus on getting in front of as many engaged people as possible, people that are going to be interested in it. Having the promotional ad on the AEW show is good. Having it on AEW Undisputed and stuff like that, that's fine. But again, wrestling card podcast, that kind of area, you're going to at least get a little bit more of a review. You're going to get more of a discussion of the pluses and minuses, the good and the bad, and a lot of that. But the other key is going back to what I just showed a couple of minutes ago. These hits have got to get out there. And one of the ways that you can help with that is by not dividing your hits amongst 2 different product drops months apart when you've already lost the momentum on the second half of it. When these suddenly start appearing in a couple of months and we see a couple of those gold PMGs and a couple of those green PMGs that we're missing up until this point, the momentum's gone. You're not going to be able to drum up the same level of excitement a second time. And even, like I said, some of the achievement stuff is very nice, but it's also very niche. It's an audience that's niche. New arrivals, releases and drops aren't going to cut it. Digital cards aren't going to cut it. These are not releases. These are not enough to drum up. By the way, Fanatics deserves the exact same amount of critique and criticism for theirs. The difference is they were able to market the hell out of it. If whenever a Fanatics product drops, and I believe Exalted is the next one that's supposed to come out for WWE, whenever that drops, we will hear about it. They will scream from the heavens that it has come out. They will move heaven and earth to make sure that we know about it and we know how expensive it is, because it's probably going to be expensive. But you will hear about it one way or the other. And in that regard, you have to give Fanatics its credit, because their marketing department is doing that. So that's where an opportunity. Now, it's not so much a criticism as an explanation that there is an opportunity for AEW to do better on this. And that video that I showed near the beginning kind of exemplifies where your challenge is. Because when the people that are tapped in and tuned in to wrestling cards are critiquing that you are not doing enough to promote this brand, you can't sit there and expect AEW to do this for you, because they don't have the brand power at this point in time. They just don't have it. They just haven't built up that cachet. They're just not at that level that they're the marketing branding machine that they can do that. So you got to help. So it's one of those things. Upper Deck and AEW both need to work together on that, and both have to create those scenarios. That's where you want to take advantage of those little opportunities that you have in front of the engaged audience, as well as the engaged audience for the wrestling itself and the engaged audience for the wrestling cards as well, and really try to promote a little bit more directed. If you don't have the budget to promote across the board to everybody, well, then you really need to be targeted and really surgical in exactly where you put that promotion, because it's got to hit and land with all the right audiences to make sure that everybody who is going to be more inclined to participate and probably buy some boxes, those are the people you want to get this out in front of. They need to know when these products are dropping, and they need to know that when you give them a release date, you come pretty close to hitting it on a consistent base. And they should feel like every 2 or 3 months or 3 or 4 months, like clockwork, these releases come out. I want to see a 4th release. If you must have EPAC, then have an EPAC exclusive. Ideally, I'd have 5 releases. I'd have 4 and an EPAC exclusive, and keep at least one of these off of EPAC. Give everybody a little bit of something. But it's one of those things. Flagship can stay on EPAC forever. That's perfectly fine. You make enough of it. There's enough of it out there to get everybody what they want. That's perfectly fine. But either in Allure or Metal, give it a break on EPAC. Give EPAC its own thing. That's my suggestion. That's just my idea, some thoughts I have. So anyway, that's it for now. So hopefully the longer video made up for the absence of almost a month. I will be back on the channel with some more videos coming up in the next little while. I'm in the same vein as everything that I just talked about. I would love to open up some more Metal Universe, but I'm waiting for it to hit discount a little bit. Honestly, I was happy with the boxes that I got. No complaints in that regard. But it's one of those things where, like I said, now that things have settled quite a bit more, I don't necessarily feel any need to open it at the original opening price. I kind of want to get a little bit discounted or get a slightly better deal so that if I open it, hey, maybe I pull something, maybe I don't. Maybe I can find some of those green PMGs and some of those gold PMGs that are missing. But if I do, I want to make sure that I get a little more bang for my buck, because at this point now it's been out for a couple months. So it's lost a lot of that initial momentum, and we're kind of sitting back waiting for SP Game Used. And when SP Game Used comes out, I will open a couple of boxes of it for sure. And then we'll kind of play that one by ear, and we'll take a closer look at it and see how we feel about that one. I think, based on some of the stuff I've seen, I think it'll be good, but it's one of those things where it is, again, not a lower price point product. It's a little bit more of a feast or famine. So you're kind of hoping to get the right characters and the right combinations. But I think it'll be a fun product that people will enjoy, especially with certain specific cards that I think were really well done. Regardless, I hope to have a little bit of follow-up on this after the Toronto Fall Expo, because I am going to more than likely be taking possession of some of those cards that I was waiting for that are going to be en route. And if I do, then I'll have a nice little mail day where I'll be able to go through a couple different things. But yeah, we'll be back with some more videos regardless, for sure. I will include a link in the description to the wrestling trading card video that I talked about and the Beckett sports card insights. Again, going back just to make sure I reiterate, my critique with what was going on in that review is not that I think he did a bad job, and I don't even necessarily knock him for it. It's not his niche, it's not his genre, and box reviews isn't really something James Beckett was known for, so I don't blame him. But at the same time, I got to take a close look at the marketing department and go, well, if it's not something he really does, and it's not something he's really known for, why are we then using review product in this way? Why are we dispensing it in this way when maybe it's got to be directed in a different place where we can get a little bit of a better sense of it? Again, with audio only, then you have to be super descriptive. I need more information, not less. Otherwise, then show me some pictures, show me some video, let me see the cards for themselves. Otherwise, I may as well go and just watch a breaker, because at least I will get that. I will get the volume of cards to be able to see for myself how they look, how they feel, what the thoughts are in terms of that, kind of in real time. So that's it. That's it for this one. I covered a lot of ground, so I'd love to have, if you have any comments or thoughts on anything that I talked about, agree, disagree, that's completely fine. I get it. But I just some things that I definitely had been thinking about for a little while, and that video kind of inspired me to go and have that discussion. So maybe we'll have a follow-up of some kind on it, depending on how people feel about it. Hopefully you got some value or some things that you can at least chew on from this one. With that said, like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much, and we'll catch you in the next one.